haven't got any sticky bombs. Well, just use a grenade then. What do you mean you've got no grenades? I'll just shoot a flare. And then I proceeded to full throttle it from a handbrake stop. So I'm spinning my wheels while everyone on the left is already exploiting the curbs, and then I suddenly realise that I'll probably end up in last before turn 2 if I don't try to grab a couple myself. So that was the abysmal start I had, losing out to close rivals Wes, Rizorkeep and Headshot, with Yuchia and Frinker giving me a run for my money into turn 2 as well. Now, for anyone that's ever played GTA 5 racing, you'll know how unlikely it is to get a perfectly clean start without at least one person being shunted off the road due to lag, even if it's a minor clip and they just end up tagging onto the back of the line. Well, feast your eyes on one of the best collective starts I've ever witnessed on this game, with not one person, not one, losing out to laggy shenanigans other than a little intimate bumper-to-bumper love and minor scratches, which, given the tightness of these Rockford roads, and given the fact that we're about 3 wide, 2 rows deep here, as if we hadn't had enough last week on DSB's GP, is an absolute miracle by no stretch of the word. And the fact that on this upcoming straight here, the fact that all 15 cars were on this tiny little straight at the same time for just a brief moment right now, it was just a thing of beauty. So Division 1, give yourself a round of applause, because a start like that, on a track like this, on a game like this, is simply unheard of. Now we're coming through the end of the lap here, and these final corners were where all the time was being made or lost. I mean, the Tailgater is such a fantastic sedan. Too fast for its closest competitors, the Primo, the Intruder and the Fugitive, but too slow to be fighting the old Shafter. The V12, well, that's just another story. So it's always sort of been in no man's land, and it's often been underappreciated in my opinion. Now, I've kept in loose touch with the Multi-Class Endurance Championship, and I saw how if this car gets its front nose damaged, it's pretty much game over. So my race strategy was simple. Try and stay out of any incidents, keep it clean for as long as I could, and oh, for fuck's sake. Why? Why, if there has to be an incident, if there has to be one, does it always happen in front of me? What's that about? What is that about? I mean, granted, I made it through and I've just been able to pick up 2 positions there against UFO Driver and G-Gamer, but it's just the principle, you know. Anyway, my race strategy was simple. Treat it like a lady. Caress it, comfort it through the hard times, and vigorously push its limits when the time is right. Not for the kids, that last one. Anyway, speaking of kids, I've got a Wes 7 in front of me who seems to be getting held up slightly by Picano in these opening laps, and I've spotted an opportunity to short shift my way into 5th, and he's not letting off here. That's just what being in the right gear looks like. Letting off looks exactly like what I'm doing to Picano right now. Holy shit, by the way, when did it start raining this much? Now, as Picano is going to hold off my preferred line, he's got it covered off, I thought, sod it, and decided to dive into the pits. For some reason, this pit lane design drew some rather critical acclamation. As we pull up here behind JJ West, and G-Gamer pulls up just behind me. Now, since I didn't plan this pit stop, I didn't really pay attention to whether I'd be stuck behind another car or not. But if I were to be stuck behind another driver, I'd much rather it be JJ West than the likes of Rizorkeep, Frinker, Headshot, Ryan, Sean, UFO Driver, etc., who, I believe, have fallen into the mid-season trap of figuring out that pitting really early usually results in a strong finishing position. But with the pressure of them all having done the same thing, we see exactly what I said would happen a couple of videos ago. I can only assume that in the squabble to fight for clear air, they've forced themselves to get 2 pit stops out of the way early, which, on a dangerously tight track like this, really puts them under more pressure to not crash their cars again for the remainder of the race. So then, of course, when you hear JJ West announce over the mic, so-and-so's crashed, so-and-so's spun out, keeping me very in touch with the back of the pack, a little hallelujah runs through my mind as I'm just driving away in the midfield with not particularly fast laps, but at least consistent ones. As you can see, Dr. Peppers was actually managing to edge out a gap over me here as 3 minutes pass by, but he makes one small mistake and suddenly that gap has completely disappeared, and once again, without any real thought behind it, just because my line was covered off, I decided, sod it, let's pit again. So with this being my last pit stop, you'd perhaps expect me to drop down to something like 9th or 10th until the positions sorted themselves out again a bit later on. So you can imagine my surprise as I came out in 5th. Due to like-minded thinking, issues or otherwise, the other drivers just weren't there. But then, in classic Cirrus fashion, I make the most unthinkable and unnecessary collision with... It's not even the inside apex, that is just a lack of concentration kicking in around the 25-minute mark. I'm just not made for races any longer than this. But the bizarre thing was that Picano, who'd been ahead, and Headshot, who'd just overtaken, still had one pit stop to make, so I was still in the running for a podium position. That is, until I lost my cool again, and Ryan, who had made 2 pit stops, was able to sneak his way up the inside. But then he had absolutely no speed going up to the Richmond Hotel, and I've just got this short shifting business absolutely down. And while we simultaneously regain our position from Ryan, we passed Picano in the pits as well. So 3rd place is definitely back on the table as we're looking to close to Dr. Pepper's, and then that happens. What kind of a crash is that? I'll tell you what it is. It's a stupid hot lappers mistake. It's not even beneficial to take that curve, but it's like a homing device. You're just lured towards them, as I lose another crucial position to JJ West. He's back and he's made his 2 pit stops. Unreal scenes then, as I'm just throwing away consistent work from the early portion of the race. However, I was able to get back past JJ West relatively quickly, and even with a shaky final sector like that, I started to increase my pace, cracking out my fastest lap there of a 1:18.1. I definitely had the potential to drop into the mid-117s, and towards the end here it's like the switch had been flicked, and while I can close up to Ryan as much as I want, it's almost a case of too little too late, because he's got track position around the very narrow Rockford Hills. However, coming onto the final straight as we head onto lap 21 here, an opportunity did present itself, and I went for the short shift pass, much like I did on A-Wes earlier on in the race. But Ryan was able to carry just a little bit more speed as we both opt for different curb usage here, so it's going to get a bit dicey down into turn 2. I tried to make a wide line work, but with just so many bumps on the outside there, it was pretty difficult to do. Now, my usual strategy would be to pit in here, but as I'd already made my 2 pit stops, I just had to sort of settle for a half-hearted lunge into the next turn, which Ryan was very easily able to cover off. And then he started to stretch out a gap, and I started oversteering and making stupid mistakes towards the end of the race, so I'd pretty much given up 3rd at this point. I just wanted to hang on to 4th, but with Ryan being so cautious in the final lap, and me kind of giving it a little bit of a push, I mean, I was sliding through that corner there, I was just able to close up much like I had in the previous lap, and Ryan was so cautious that he's basically asking for it at this stage, and I think you guys know that if I'm given an opportunity, I'm going to go for it. As Ryan attempts to make a defensive stance into the penultimate passing point, but I'm just going to chuck it in, smack those back wheels down and ride the wave of momentum down the pavement, swing it around the outside, contact! Well, it's happened! I've executed the move and there's absolutely nothing he can do to respond. Podium prowess in the closing moments of that race, much to Ryan's chagrin. Woo! All in all, I'm still a bit gutted about throwing away a guaranteed 2nd place because I pitted so well in this race, and apparently Dr. Pepper's choked right after I pitted for the 2nd time. I would have never caught Nima, and it's great to see Nima return to winning form, so congratulations to him. And we see the cracks emerging in the Perth trio of Headshot, Rizocki and Frinker as they fought for survival, and rather shockingly, the top dog has not made it through. If you thought that was juicy, wait till you see what's about to happen in Division 2, my Batsu Penumbra race. Everything gets off to a jolly old start, but we're about to skip to the end, and Oracle XR, who's led the entire race, is under all kinds of pressure from Shawnell as they come down the hill. They're weaving right, left, right. It's Shawnell. Shawnell with a run to the line. Can you believe it? He gets a better exit, catches the bumps beautifully, and snatches first away from Oracle. But the drama is not over yet. Any moment now, we should see 2 more cars approaching the final section side by side, but we've just seen 2 stellar examples of how to do this, so surely nothing can go wrong. Oh, who am I kidding? It's you cheering Mini Temper. Anything could happen. You cheers upside down on his roof in the middle of the road. Jakey's crashed into him, and Gary Strength comes through to pick up the scraps. Who's going to get 5th? Who's going to get 5th? It's Mike! It's Mike! It's Mike! Mike's going through to Division 1, and just when you thought it was all over, neither you cheer nor Jakey are going through. Sean L13 with an admirable victory from the back. Oracle was just pleased to finally get into Division 1, and there will be no penalties for the racing incident that occurred at the end, and the results that you see on the screen are in fact the final results. Unbelievable stuff to conclude Division 2. As we skip to the end of the Division 3 race, Most C Wanted comes through to take a great victory to get himself back into Division 2. Followed closely by Why Morocco, followed closely by I'm Awesome, followed closely by Racing Benji, followed closely by JBeast888, followed closely by Jim Bob Stroud. And that is the level of competition that we had in Division 3 this week. Thanks guys for putting on yet another fantastic Division 3 race. Always enjoyable to be the pit man to watch those go down. So, in closing, Most C Wanted's going back up. Why Morocco's going back up. I'm Awesome and JBeast making their debuts and getting straight into Division 2. Congratulations to them. And Racing Benji getting back to Division 2 as well. Unfortunately, Jim Bob just missed out. If only you'd pushed just a little bit more, Jim Bob, those 2/10 might have mattered. Okay, thanks everyone. That's been fantastic. See you next week.